International Dispute Advisory Group. I'm a past president of the Chartered Institute of Building, a fellow of the RICS, and I'm on the national panel of the American Arbitration Association. I'm speaking to you from Atlanta in the States today. I'm delighted to introduce this second in our series of 2024 webinars where we'll be discussing the delivery of mega projects. On the first webinar, we discussed setup strategy for mega projects and the considerations that go into project planning for high-profile, ambitious infrastructure projects. There are, of course, a number of mega and giga projects currently under construction around the world, particularly across the Middle East. In this webinar, we'll build and expand on the topic we discussed in terms of setup strategy. Typically, once contracts have been awarded, they're negotiated and signed, at which point everyone usually very happy or at least relieved. In some cases, this moment will have been the result of months, if not years of effort, and last-minute contract negotiations can be drawn out and painful experiences, as we all know. So contract is signed, and everyone's feeling good about the project. What happens next? Well, this is where the hard work begins. The period after contracts are signed is often called the honeymoon period, as all parties want to do their best, establish positive relationships, and set the tone for delivery of the project. But it's also where all the planning meets reality, which can result in some of the toughest challenges, not only in terms of the problems that may arise, but also because a thing called optimism bias exists, and so nobody wants to create problems. It's a period of the project where arguably the biggest risk can be encountered. Because of the honeymoon period and optimism bias, it's common for parties to overlook the contracts they spent several months negotiating. After that, construction projects typically encounter unforeseen issues that need to be resolved before the project is successfully completed, at which point there may be claims to deal with, defects remediation, assessments of overruns in terms of budget and time. In this webinar, we'll be exploring technical, legal, and practical challenges involved in moving mega projects out of design into construction and completion. Each of these project phases creates challenges. Our panel will share their views on delivery of mega projects based on their experience. The final webinar in this series will be on the topic of conflict avoidance in mega project disputes. So please look out for that later this year. We're delighted to welcome our international panel who combine legal, technical, and practical experience. The panel will share their experience of mega projects and provide insight for the benefit of our attendees. We'll discuss the execution strategies and challenges that parties might consider when delivering mega projects. We'll allow some time to answer your questions at the end today on the panel discussion, so please feel free to ask us any questions or tell us about the issues you're facing. Please submit as many of your questions as you can on the Q&A function, and we'll attempt to get to them, as many as possible at least, at the end. Our panel today again consists of legal and technical experts from Freeths and Gleeds who have experience in dealing with all aspects of mega projects from setup to delivery and conflict avoidance. We also have the pleasure of welcoming Virginia Bukowski, the Global Managing Director for Transit at Hatch, as our special guest speaker. Gleeds and Freeths have joined forces to create Construction Disputes A to Z. This is an initiative where we offer one-stop technical contractual to clients. We have available a mark on this initiative as a handout for this webinar. If this raises any issues on your projects where you think we could help, or you think you may have need of our services, please don't hesitate to email us. Our email addresses are on the slide you can see on the screen. Alternatively, connect with us on LinkedIn and we're happy to have a no obligations discussion about any issues you may be facing. I'd also like to mention that our previous webinars are available to view on the Gleeds YouTube channel. This one will be also once we've finished. Just go to YouTube and search for Gleeds and select videos. So let's move on with the main business and I'll let the speakers introduce themselves. Alex.
Thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody. Nice to be here. My name's Alex Johnson. I'm a partner at Freeths and I specialize in construction and engineering disputes. I'm based in the UK, but I have an international practice. I have experience of all sorts of projects around the world, and I've worked on a number of construction disputes on projects in the Middle East region, and for clients based all over the world, particularly in Europe and the USA. Mainly handle conflict avoidance and dispute resolution through international arbitration, but I also draft and negotiate contracts for clients and advise them on issues that arise during the course of the project. My mega project experience includes a greenfield international airport, several major oil and gas facilities, renewables projects, and also Olympic Games infrastructure. And I'm often involved with mega projects when problems arise during the project delivery.
Thank you, Alex. John?
Thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. I'm John Rafat. I'm a director of Gleeds Egypt. I'm a chartered quant surveyor. I'm a member of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. I'm a board member of the RICS Egypt Market Advisory Panel. I'm having over 20 years of international experience in the field of project and cost management and dispute resolution on high-profile projects within large developers, cost consultant, and first-tier contractor at a senior level in the MENA region. I have been involved in several mega projects, such as the development of Dubai Festival City in UAE, Cairo Festival City, Marasi and Seoul projects in Egypt, Team project in Pakistan, King Salman Park and Shusha Island projects in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, among others.
Thank you, John. And our special guest today, Virginia.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Managing Director for Global Transit at Hatch, based in New York City. I'm leading and developing a world-class team to deliver significant growth of our global transit business while cultivating deep client, contractor, and partner relationships. I have led international design, construction, and delivery of mega projects spanning over 30 years. These mega projects include Fulton Transit Center in New York, Eglinton Light Rail in Toronto, Doha Metro Stations in Qatar, RAM in Montreal, the Mario Cuomo Bridge in New York, and the Encore project in Toronto. I've split my career between client organizations and consultant roles. I am a licensed architect in New York, chartered architect in the UK, a CIOB fellow and former trustee, board member of the American Public Transportation Association, and former board member of the Women's Transportation Seminar Foundation and Construction Managers Association of America International Committee. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Virginia, and wonderful to have you join us today. Please remember to submit your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll leave time at the end to answer them. Past experience tells us we won't get to them all, so if you have any questions or issues you'd like to discuss after the webinar, please email us. We'll be showing our contact details again at the end of the webinar. Alternatively, connect with us on LinkedIn and ask your questions directly. So on with the questions. First question. So setup strategy is established. The contracts are in place and signed. What happens next? Alex.
Thank you, Chris. Well, in my experience, being a drafter and negotiator from time to time, this is the point where all the lawyers will disappear. Sometimes, but not always, to sighs of relief. We'll have spent long periods of time with our clients during contract negotiations. Often that will be in windowless meeting rooms. And so clients are very happy to see us leave and celebrate the newly signed contract. But unfortunately, after that, clients will commonly quickly put the hard negotiated contract away in the bottom drawer and start to work on the project, because that's what they've been looking forward to. And frankly, it's much more exciting than talking to their lawyers about it. So often, once the contract is signed, nobody wants to talk about the contract anymore, because this is when the fun starts, project execution begins. But starting the project is exactly when clients need to understand the contract and to be absolutely clear on what they've signed up to and what processes and procedures that they've agreed with their counterparty. And the reason for that is contracts contain mechanisms, and often these are intricate, they're complex, and they operate when certain risks arise. So it's essential that both parties understand how the contract works in order to perform the project well. And also, in combination, the early phases of the project are often where the key risks will arise and threaten to blow the project off course. As you said in your introduction, Chris, this feels like a honeymoon, but it isn't. It's where the planning meets the reality and is also a time of high risk. Common problems that arise at this early stage include noticing problems with the tender designs, the schedule quickly becomes unrealistic or just unworkable, unexpected conditions are discovered once the ground is broken. And now all of these issues are things that are catered for in construction contracts, but because of this honeymoon period, it's common that nobody wants to start issuing claim notices or early warning notices for fear of being the one that looks like they're rocking the boat, or for fear of upsetting the client, even though this is precisely what they should be doing because that's what they've agreed to do in the contract. The risk for the contractor in not serving notices on time is that claims may become time barred. So contractors in particular, in my view, shouldn't feel that issuing claims notices will upset the owner and therefore they shouldn't be served. That will just store up problems until later, and it's not transparent behavior either, both of which are not likely to be healthy for the project over the longer term. So you may expect me to say this, but I would advocate keeping legal teams involved after contract signature, and in particular ask them to explain the contract or to summarize key things for you in order to understand what it means. It's a lot more cost effective to ask a lawyer a quick question such as, we've discovered an unexpected underground structure on the site, what should we do, than pretend that the problem doesn't exist and then carry on. In the worst case, just ignoring that problem can result in an expensive dispute.
Thank you, Alex. John, the contracts are signed. What's your advice?
Now that the contracts are signed, parties will enter a critical phase where they will translate the plans on paper into project execution and manage this transition proactively. I think parties need to ensure that the project implementation and support staff fully understands the contract details. This will bridge the gap between pre-contract planning and actual execution. It also set clear expectation for all stakeholders and test the robustness of the plans. Documentation is a cornerstone at this stage, as while experienced team actually handles their project, customizing documentation templates to the project specific needs remains crucial. I actually disagree about the honeymoon period, and I agree with Alex that the proper contract administration is mandated from day one, as well as close monitoring and control of stakeholders' performance. This includes risk management, proactive issue handling, market intelligence, and continuous schedule and budget adjustments. Communication at this stage is an essential part as well, and developing clear communication plans and regularly updating them is vital. These plans should reflect project needs, provide tools for easy communication of lesson learned, and incorporate market feedback. The project team should prioritize dispute avoidance from day one. Fostering trust and good faith adherence to contracts is a key. Regular review and evaluation of contracts and procedures along with stakeholders' feedback will help achieving this as well, Chris. All decisions and actions during this stage should align with the established project brief and its defined targets. In essence, this phase should not be seen as an endpoint for the contract agreement. Instead, it is, I would say, about translating the contract into action, setting clear expectation, and establishing a proactive and collaborative foundation for successful project execution. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, John. Some great advice in there, and of course, a lot of process and communications information from our quantity surveyor lead. Virginia, over to you. What happens next after contracts are signed? Your perspective.
Well, I agree that sometimes we put the lawyers to the back, but I think that that is completely not the way to go. When I've had close involvement with my legal support through a contract, the results have always been better. The relationship building with all parties is critical to success, and this includes both legal and contractual expertise. Project leadership must be fully engaged on multiple project-wide issues, and having strong legal advice is what has saved many of my projects. I've also believe it's important as part of project setup to identify all team members' roles and responsibilities so that in this case, they know where to turn when issues arise. For a practical example, when managing the Doha Metro project in our PMC role, our team took the contract and translated it into a series of critical specific terms and then tracked these similar to project deliverables on a monthly basis with the entire design build team, including our legal and contracts professionals. This reminded everyone what we had all agreed to at the outset and allowed for deviations to be caught quickly and dealt with proactively.
Thank you, Virginia. So continuing legal advocacy a theme there, plus John recommending strong processes for contract administration, risk management, communications, and of course, mechanisms, really. So let's go to the second question. What happens when unforeseen issues arise and risks are encountered? Alex.
Thank you, Chris. Well, unforeseen issues on construction projects are inevitable. It's the nature of the work. And it's why construction and engineering contracts have been developed to deal with the unforeseeable as far as possible. So contracts will usually cover things like the access rights to the site and what happens if the contractor isn't given access on time, what happens if unforeseen physical and other site conditions are discovered, what happens if archaeological or geological findings are discovered, which can be a huge problem if the project is in historically a very densely populated area, like central London, for example. How to deal with discrepancies between the documents that form the contract, what happens when the employer changes the works, and force majeure events. Now, generally speaking, each of those risks is owned contractually by one party or the other, except force majeure, which neither party owns. An employer's risk will generally mean that the contractor receives an extension of time and possibly also financial compensation if it arises. And in order to secure that entitlement, the contractor is probably going to have to serve a notice that the event has occurred, provide particulars that substantiate the entitlement to either the extension of time and or the additional payment. And a contractor's risk occurring means that the contractor is put to additional cost and is liable to pay liquidated damages if the effect of the risk is to cause critical delay to the completion date. And the third category is force majeure events, which are different. They are unexpected events that neither party can control, and if they happen, they will relieve one party or both parties from performing their contractual obligations. And force majeure is a little different in that it doesn't generally entitle one party to claim financial compensation because it's not fault-based. So the key message here really is to ensure that the contract adequately deals with the risks that are considered likely to be the risks that might occur on the project before signing the contract.
Thank you, Alex. John, how do you approach unforeseen issues and arising risks?
As Alex was saying, actually for normal audience and stakeholders newly joining the construction industries, this question may be perceived as if there is a problem. However, construction experts deal with unforeseen issues and risks to be business as usual. I think this is resulting from the amount of issues and risks we have seen in our previous projects and past experience. Unforeseen issues, risk, and uncertainties are part of the nature of the industry, and construction contracts should put measures and procedures in place to handle and avoid these issues rather than actually waiting for them to happen. Speaking from a project and cost management perspective and point of view, actually the answer to what happens should be part of the established project risk management strategy. A basic part of this should be the reflection of the feedback received from all stakeholders and should be the responsibility of all the team members to identify, monitor, and control these risks. Risks taking place should not only be handled locally, rather they should be actually managed on a global level. Parties should always refer back to the project brief or the project execution plan. The effect of such risk should be measured and assessed on the whole project, and specifically on the project cash flow projection, revised timeline schedule, revised anticipated final accounts, and even if these risks actually trigger the appearance of new risks, which is common in the industry as a common factor.
Thank you, John. And then over to Virginia. What about arising risks and unforeseen events, Virginia? How do you approach them?
My experience, even though it's common to encounter unforeseen conditions or issues, teams rarely handle these smoothly. Either the issue causes a delay which is not properly or at all documented, or a dispute arises with the owner as to whether the issue is truly unforeseen or should have been identified or understood by the designer or contractor. One example I had was in New York City during the construction of a transit megaproject. As we constructed the new South Ferry subway station, we hit a huge stumbling block. Archaeologists uncovered tens of thousands of artifacts buried amongst the structural remains of colonial New York's Battery Wall and Whitehall Slip. This unforeseen discovery caused significant delay of the construction and questions as to whether finding 65,000 artifacts was indeed something that could not have been predicted given the location of the excavation. As part of the mitigation, however, a report was required by the State Historic Preservation Office, and when construction resumed, it was with significantly increased monitoring and documentation requirements. In the end, the star feature of the station's mezzanine is a portion of the historic battery wall from colonial times found during the excavation. So although the outcome may have been positive, it was a significant delay and issue for the contractors involved and the owner. So we need to do better in the future opportunities we have. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, Virginia. That's a fascinating example of unforeseen conditions from colonial times in the USA. Third question, when challenges arise, what are the best ways to keep the project moving? Alex.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, the really short answer to that is to try to avoid the disputes becoming such that they endanger the progress of the project. And contracts are generally designed to do that, particularly where they include things like the dispute resolution boards or dispute avoidance boards that we discussed on the previous webinar. Unfortunately, I think parties tend to store claims up until the end of the project, because at that point they perceive that they will form the basis for a commercial negotiation or commercial settlement of the final account price or final contract price, or worst case, it may result in formal dispute resolution, for example, such as arbitration. I think for mega projects, as we discussed last time, there's case to say that that approach is not workable given the size and scope of the projects. And so without dispute boards or without other interim dispute resolution provisions, parties can find themselves short on options to resolve problems as and when they arise. And I've advocated before the need for contract procedures that provide an interim relief which is rigorous, but is less extensive than full international arbitration. Now, in the UK, we have adjudication, which has been around for some time, but that has drawbacks, also benefits. But the key criticism is always that it can amount to rough justice because it's so quick and rough and ready. Otherwise, procedures tend to be bespoke, such as expert determination, where the parties agree to appoint an expert, which could be a lawyer, it could be an engineer, depending on the issue in question. They're employed to reach a decision in a short period of time. And if the parties can agree on a suitable expert, then that can be a very effective means of interim dispute resolution, particularly where the dispute is a technical one or is discrete in nature. The drawback with it is generally that the decision is non-binding, and so it's open to a future challenge in arbitration. And if the contract doesn't include anything to do with interim dispute resolution provisions, I think the situation can be very difficult. While parties are free to agree on any means of dispute resolution they may like, such as mediation, for example, it doesn't require them to agree at least on that. If they're already in a dispute scenario or if relationships have already broken down, that can be challenging for obvious reasons. And I think ultimately, sometimes owners and contractors seem to me to fail to recognize that their interests are actually very similar. They both want to complete the project. The owner wants to take advantage of the completed asset to make money, and the contractor wants to finish the job and get paid. And I've said before that if parties have the mindset of putting the project first as an investment in which they both have a key stake, that's overall a healthier way of approaching the construction project. And I think if that is the mindset, then both sides are better predisposed to solve problems without risking the project, almost irrespective of what the contract might say.
Thank you, Alex. And I think anybody that's watched our previous webinars know that I'm a big proponent of progressive and proactive dispute resolution as the project proceeds. So good advice from Alex there. John, what's your advocacy for keeping things moving when challenges arise?
Actually, Chris, I believe the best way to keep project moving is to maintain actually the established proactive approach for managing risks, always live and running. Having a well-established risk management plan with proper monitoring and control procedure and a risk response strategy means that the project parties will be having a complete procedures to kick in once any of these challenges arise. I had seen in my experience tendencies from project parties to innovate and try to reinvent the wheel in the face of raised challenges, which I always advocate not to. I would urge to check the contract documents, execution plan, and other project documents for established procedures and processes to resolve or mitigate such challenges whenever they arise. In other words, always get back to what your contract dictate rather than trying to figure out how you can deal with such challenges separately and solve it in an innovative way. Again, proactive communication and transparency is a must and allows the teams collaborative problem solving and benefiting from lesson learned from all stakeholders. When facing challenges, you should actually be prepared to adopt project plans and approaches with new facts and figures. This might involve exploring alternative solution, revisiting project budgets, revisiting project timelines, as it is all about flexibility and ability to adapt to change. It is very important to record lesson learned in a well-established and organized registers that can later be part of project closure documents and also be the foundation of the documentation of new planned projects. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, John. There's some things emerging there. Great advice. Virginia, how do you keep project moving when disputes arise?
Similar to Alex and John, I agree that an aligned team that includes the designer, engineer, contractor, and owner will be a successful one, with the goal of delivering the project first. After they have developed a trusted relationship, then managing change or obstacles becomes a shared goal. If a relationship is broken down, then each party is only looking out for their own interests. As a former public agency owner, I've experienced extraordinary trust between team members. The most awe-inspiring episode was how the engineers and contractor communities bonded together after the events of 9/11 in New York City. The trust and singularity of purpose in the days following the attack with a shared goal of bringing transit service back to Lower Manhattan was just amazing. The work was done with limited contracts, guidelines, or T's and C's. Although this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for everyone to pull together in the same direction, recently the MTA has faced another event where an abrupt change in funding has left them in a difficult position. Those consultants and contractors who have trusted relationships with the owner are allowing for documented leeway to continue to move projects forward outside of specific contract terms. So it can be done.
Thank you, Virginia. So work hard on keeping relationships intact, be proactive, communicate, be prepared to adapt, keep risk registers and early warning logs. And Virginia's example there of the 9/11 tragedy is a tremendous example of extremes in positive collaboration from New Yorkers. And I think everybody around the world admired how that came together in the face of tragedy. So fourth question, with the amount of data being produced on mega projects, how can parties use this to their advantage? Alex, big data.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I mean, the importance of documentary records in construction disputes is very well known. And generally, the more and better records that one party has, generally, the better that party's chances are of successfully prosecuting or defending a claim. And so the mantra is always records, 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 as the party's chances in a dispute are much improved if ordered, accurate, meticulously prepared evidence is available in the form of all these well-kept records. And while a problem is often insufficient records, I think there are now issues at the other extreme. The official project record for mega projects alone can contain millions of documents. And that's without considering other potentially disclosable information under English law, for example, which would include personal emails, WhatsApp messages, social media posts, metadata. I think there's probably an issue of transition. Traditionally, construction has been one of the least digitized industries, but today construction projects can generate a wealth of digital information. And so I think the industry is challenged to manage construction projects that generate, as you said, Chris, big data. And when it comes to dispute, how to interrogate volumes of data to show cause and effect can be hugely expensive. A key question, I think, is how construction projects manage big data to analyze what's happening and how to predict outcomes. And that's likely to be where generative AI steps in. And AI relies on patterns, and there's plenty that it could do. For example, generating, optimizing schedules, providing early warnings of issues that could cause delay and dispute, and modeling the outcomes. But in terms of claims, I think it's still developing, and it has well publicized weaknesses for giving factually inaccurate answers or just making things up. And so I expect, and to a degree I hope, that while claim preparation will always require us lawyers and claims consultants, generative AI will provide us with some useful tools to be more efficient in doing that, given the amount of big data that's being produced. But of course, fundamentally, that technology relies on the data being captured and stored in the first place. And I think from that perspective, albeit from the opposite approach, the mantra remains records, records, records. The challenge is how you use that to your advantage.
Thank you, Alex. An interesting observation on how AI might develop going forward too. So John, your views on how to utilize big data that's available these days.
Big data mean knowledge, Chris. Knowledge is power. Mega project commonly include a variety of benchmarks and market feedback. So it is a wealth of information for project and cost managers database, or what we can call a gold mine for success. Project of this size always involve multiple stakeholders, which also help in exploring different grades or scales of market segments. In markets with evolving or changing economic situation, having this kind of information mean continuous verification of benchmarks, update to inflation and other location indexes, better setup for future project success. On the project level, data is a key factor in decision-making process. Learning from the initial stages of the projects means we can build on this lesson learned and achieve better results in future ones. For example, we have been recently involved in a significant project where it's actually developing infrastructure for a big city. And we have used this recently to build the benchmarks for the new planned projects, the government one on Ras Al Hikma on North Coast, the one where UAE have involved with the Egyptian government to collaborate. So this have been a significant benchmark for us to benchmark against, where at this early stage, there's no enough information about the design factor, sizes of the substations and power plants and others. However, we managed to get benchmarks from this live project, or actually completed project, to run it through this one to the feasibility model and get more fine-tuned feedback to get an educated estimate where the client can do an informed decision based on. Also, data should be used to monitor productivity and translate into KPIs for such project and team performance. Setting up KPIs and tracking them would improve efficiency, improve productivity. This can apply on too many levels. On a strategic level, for example, where you can monitor the selected project type against their revenue generated, or on a project level where you can apply lesson learned from value engineering perspective, or contractor level where you can actually reflect lesson learned on missed statements, buildability, construction methodologies. It is important to remember that data is only as valuable as it is interpreted and applied. So having the right tools and expertise to analyze and translate data into actionable insights is crucial. By leveraging the power of data and implementing these strategies, parties involved in mega project can gain a significant competitive advantage. They can make data-driven, informed decision, optimize project execution, and ultimately deliver, having a successful delivery, which is, as Alex said, is the main aim of the projects in beginning. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, John. You reminded me of a client we have over here who's always saying facts are our friends. So Virginia, big data, how do you advocate utilizing it?
For us in the engineering and design side, digital tools are supporting human multitasking as we move into a new era in the construction industry, finally. For example, at Hatch, our digital project delivery tools not only provide a record of issues, compliance, and coordination, but also bridge that gap where information can provide a buffer to a project manager who might be conflict avoidance leaning, and rather than understanding that the more the owner knows and becomes part of the process, the better outcome for the project and the whole team. Any kind of DPD system allows owners to gain greater visibility into their project's performance, and as John said, knowledge is power, improving decision-making through real-time data analysis and enhancing collaboration and communication among project stakeholders. These capabilities help mitigate risk, optimize resources, and ultimately achieve our owners' desired return on investment. Additionally, DPD can facilitate more efficient and cost-effective project execution, enabling clients to achieve greater operational efficiencies. From a designer technical standpoint, being able to visually connect an owner to design issues and constructability challenges is invaluable for the entire team in enabling more informed and timely decision-making, which is critical for our projects. Tools available today include immersive design and virtual reality, digital construction and commissioning, and digital twins. These tools support owners from concept through to operations while balancing effort, accountability, risk, and cost.
Thank you, Virginia, and the design aspects creeping into there. I wonder, thanks for the insight into the benefits of data and knowledge, and as John termed it, suspect that this will only ramp up as AI finds its way into the construction industry. I think the jury's out on that. So moving on to the next question, the fifth question, and our last question today. What are the issues that could be faced when closing out a project, often a phase which is somewhat overlooked? Alex?
There are many. John is chuckling away, so I'm sure he'll be better qualified to explain that than me. But I'll mention one question that clients commonly ask us lawyers. That is, are the works complete? Now, the answer, legally speaking, of course, depends on the requirements for completion that are contained in the contract. Typically, contracts will refer to practical completion or substantial completion or taking over. And while the terminology changes depending on the type of the project, substantial completion or similar is essentially the point where the owner assumes occupation or makes use of the completed work. And contractually, practical completion or substantial completion is not usually defined, and clients are sometimes surprised about that, and surprised that it doesn't mean the work is required to be 100% complete and zero defects. Now, in essence, it means that the work is largely complete, save only for minor defects or minor incomplete work. And that work is addressed in the defects rectification period, which is also referred to as the snagging period or the punch list period, that typically follows completion. And all of this is subject to whether the contract adds any further specific conditions or deliverables that have to be fulfilled before the works are certified as complete. So, for example, the FIDIC Yellow Book 2017 requires several things. Firstly, that the work is complete in accordance with the contract, including having passed the tests on completion, that the engineer has given a notice of no objection to the as-built records that have been submitted, that the engineer has also given a notice of no objection to the provisional operation and maintenance manuals for the works, that the contractor has carried out any training if that's required, and that a taking over certificate has been issued or is deemed to have been issued. And there may, of course, be project-specific deliverables which are required on the contract on top of that. For example, making available particular records or particular reports. So there could be a host of conditions that are imposed by the contract, all of which have to be fulfilled before the contractor is given completion of the works. And in practice, that can be a contentious point if the deliverables are excessive and there are numerous requirements to be fulfilled, because that can lead owners to withholding certifying completion essentially until they are satisfied.
Thank you, Alex. John, project closeout advice.
Okay, Chris. Project closure is the last phase of the project lifecycle, and it is a crucial phase of project management that unfortunately often get overlooked or rushed. At this stage, the project managers, their team, and the stakeholders need to review their deliverables, the quality of their work, and if the intended outcome was achieved and satisfactory actually have been reached to. Failing to properly close out a project can lead to various problems, such as unresolved issues, missed opportunities, unhappy stakeholders, wasted resources. One of the primary challenges in project closeout is dealing with the incomplete deliverables. As Alex was saying, incomplete deliverables can impact stakeholder satisfaction and the project overall success. Therefore, project teams need to identify and address any outstanding deliverables during the closeout stage. For example, imagine a construction project where the original plan included the installation of solar panels on the building roof, for example. However, due to budget constraints, only half of the planned solar panel areas were installed. The incomplete deliverable can result in reduced energy efficiency and cost saving of the buildings, affecting both the stakeholders and project stakeholders' intent and project long-term goals. To overcome this challenge, project teams can actually develop a comprehensive checklist of all deliverables at the beginning of the project and regularly update it throughout the project lifecycle. This will help make sure that no deliverables are overlooked or left incomplete during the closeout phase. Another challenge in project closeout is dealing with unresolved issues and risks, which can impact the project success and need to be addressed before the project is closed. Project teams should ensure all outstanding issues and risks are resolved or at least mitigated to an acceptable level by all parties. Stakeholders' dissatisfaction is also a significant challenge during project closeout. This can occur if stakeholders fear that their expectations were not met or if they encounter difficulties in utilizing the project outcomes. The closeout phase should focus on addressing any stakeholder concern and ensuring their satisfaction. I would actually advocate to clear communication and regular engagement with stakeholders throughout the project, which will help mitigate this challenge and organizing stakeholders' feedback sessions or survey during the closeout phase help to gather insights on their level of satisfaction and also identify any areas of improvement that can help to the proper closeout and closure of the project. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you, John. Good advice there. Over to Virginia. What's your approach to project closeout, Virginia?
My experience, this is where clear definitions in the contract are so important to the project. What is meant by substantial completion specifically? It was noted by Alex and John that the owner may have assumptions, the client may have assumptions of what substantial completion is, but what's in the contract is critical to saving the day. What are the contractual timeframes for identification and resolution of punch list items? I've been on projects where a client was identifying punch list items years after the project was actually awarded and within the time frame of closeout. Especially where, for example, in New York City, where we're working for public agency owners, there may be no standard contract, and where each agency owner develops their own and potentially revises terms for each project. So what are the payment terms and any holdback provisions for non-completion of deliverables as noted earlier? The clearer the contract is on these issues, the more likely closeout can happen smoothly. In my experience, many of the key team members that would be able to close out a project on all sides will have already moved on to the next project before closeout even begins. This is a clear detriment to the project. You lose a sense of urgency to close the books when the main team members have already moved on. This alone can increase the cost of the project since many contractors build the risk of not collecting or delayed collection of any holdback payments into the bid reserve to cover this potential result.
Thank you, Virginia. Not surprisingly, you mentioning the lack of standard contracts in New York. It's a lawyer's dream, Alex. And that's why standard contracts are often advocated by practitioners like John and I. So some interesting advice and input on project closeout there, often requiring special teams. And you hear a theme there that it's a phase that's not given the attention it deserves and often overlooked until it's upon us. So with that, we'll go to questions, and we've got about another 15 minutes. So a few questions arising. One of them here, what behavior would the panel nominate as the most helpful in getting mega projects over the line? So some organizational psychology creeping in here. What behaviors are important in getting projects over the line? And I'm going to go to Virginia first here.
Well, definitely collaboration. I think that this approach has been sort of begun in the UK and also in Australia, and it has yet to hit some other areas of the globe. And we do push for that. I've advocated for this in the States for a while now, and some agencies and owners are adopting it, but being able to have that collaborative approach, whether it's in a contracting methodology or just adopted by the team in a contract where it doesn't even really require you to be collaborative. But everyone knows that if we are collaborative and trusting, that things can really turn out a lot better than if we are not.
And of course, the 9/11 in New York being the primary example of that.
Sure.
So
Sure.
I'm going to go to John now. What behaviours you'd nominate, John, as being the most helpful in getting mega projects over the line?
I actually agree with Virginia, plus I would say continuous communication, transparency and continuous communication, which actually helps setting the right expectation levels and help as well as a collaborative environment, because I have seen contractors and clients working in silos, and the expectation of each party is totally different. As Alex was saying, they leave the major disputes and unresolved issue to the end of the project, where they think this will come to a commercial closure or a commercial deal, amicable settlement. Sometimes this doesn't happen, while it would be easier actually if there is a continuous communication, early warnings, and to adapt to these changes, it would be resolved automatically and lead to actually a smooth execution and delivery.
Thanks, John. Of course, if everybody behaved the right way, we probably wouldn't need lawyers. But Alex, you might have an observation on it.
Well, in one sense, I do hope not. But in another, I agree with all that's been said. I think for me, it's about mindset. I think it's what mindset do the parties go into the project with? If it's a mindset of, I just want this contract to put all the risk onto the other party, then that's not generally very helpful, and it has nothing to do with doing the project. It's just an allocation of contractual risk that is probably unrealistic, is guaranteed to aggravate the other side. And so I think the parties that approach the project with this project first mentality, if they have that mentality, they're more pragmatic in how they will agree the contract. Often you see this process of negotiation of a contract can be quite tortuous over even the odd word here or there, which actually, if you step back, doesn't make much difference in the scheme of things. So I think if parties had a more collaborative project first mindset, then I think that would drive more pragmatic and more easily resolvable negotiation issues, and focus down on what's really important rather than the legal niceties of particular phrases.
Very good. So mindset, communication, and collaboration, the three themes there. So, expanded on that. If you had what would a winning culture in a leadership team look like, and how do you foster it, and how do you cascade that culture down through the total project organization? So, do you have an observation on that one, Virginia? How do you get it filtered down through so that everybody's pulling on the same rope?
You're right that the sort of the message and the association comes from the top. In the Doha Metro project, we all met at a sort of semi-senior level and really outlined what we thought our roles and responsibilities were on the project, and also communicated our sort of what our thoughts were on the project. So what level of dedication, what level of communication, and we also did sort of one of those personality typing, just to get a sense of who the team members were, right? And then making sure that everyone understood that it was a sort of an open collaborative discussion process, even if we didn't all align on what our goals were for the end of the project, which I'll say they didn't align, but they at least were understood, right? So it was a base communication level, and then making sure that each person who left that sort of collaboration sharing took those messages back to their teams, right? And then enforce those on a monthly or a daily basis is critical. As someone said today, communication is where it's at. So just making sure that the messaging and the leadership is clear at all times.
Excellent advice. John, winning culture and cascading that culture down through the team. How do you foster it?
As a project manager, actually, I would say start from the setup stage where you pre-qualify the teams. So you need to select the correct team members for each role, and then you make the interviews for the key role members in every organization. So when you get, as Virginia was saying, with the head, and you communicate something to him, you are sure that it will be harmonically messaged down to everyone on the team members, and working together as a one united team with one aim is to deliver a project rather than working into individual entities, everyone trying to hide or actually to work for his own benefit or protect his own interest in that project is also a bit problematic. Once you get into the initial stage and set up through the project execution plan, and you explain to everyone, guys, we're here day one. There is no different organization. We are all now working as a one team just to deliver this project. This is a setup stage. This is what we want to do. This is the end result, which we need to achieve, let's say, in a couple of years. So let's focus within this all years to work all our reasonable endeavors to reach to this stage. Once you get this message clear to the heads and they cascade it down, I think it works smoothly until the end. And this is generally what I try to do in all of our projects is, guys, we're not here to debate things. We're here to resolve things to get smoothly to the end stage, delivery stage.
Thanks, John. That's super advice. So I think, Alex, we need a new contract clause that says that thou shalt foster a winning culture and cascade it down through the overall teams. How do you write a clause like that and engender that into?
Yeah, that's difficult. What you do see is having the key people clause. I think that can be quite useful. You know, you have to keep certain named individuals involved in the project, because I think continuity is an important part of what we're talking about here. And where I've seen projects fall into difficulty is where one team will go out and bid for the work and win the contract, promising things, no doubt, and agreeing to certain things. And then it gets turned over to the delivery team, who are different people, different team altogether. And it's almost, well, how do we deliver what these other guys have just been agreeing? And this is where some of the problems start. You know, the sales team have committed to a schedule that just isn't going to work, or you know, they didn't ask the right questions about the project. And so it's this sort of communication and continuity point that I think causes difficulties, because this early stage of the project, the honeymoon period, is where you can bake a lot of the trouble into the project, because if it's not properly set up, as we talked about last time, I think this is where you find execution difficulties start. So very difficult to write the clause that you're talking about, Chris. Not impossible, of course, but I think consider the key people that you want involved in the project, and have that provision that they shall be maintained throughout, or at least replaced with somebody that is of an equal standing. The other thing that you sometimes see is that the very senior people who are there signing the contract and shaking the hands are not the people that deliver the project. And again, they're far more junior, is what I'm saying. And again, that can cause problems.
Thank you, Alex.
Alex, there is an easy way. Just put the recording for this session as a hyperlink to any contracts, and it's easier for them.
There you go.
Very good. So we've got one more topic, which really comes out of mega projects in a big way: how to manage the stress in the full glare of public and political attention. And I'm sure that you've come across that one. Virginia, I'll go to you first. That's the difference really between mega projects and a lesser project, if you like.
I think experience is the best you can have, is just going through it and starting up a new one. The other thing is, at least in mega projects, you usually have a significant team behind you that can support you and support the project. So if one portion of the project is sort of maybe experiencing some significant negative press or something, someone else can always come in and sort of assist and hold up that side of the table for you while things are working themselves out, because you know that in a year's time it'll be on the other foot. And the other thing is try to align stakeholders so that when these sort of blowups might occur, that they're there to support you and to sort of take some of the pressure off, right? So I would say that those are the best advice I have, but really it's just living through it and getting on to the next one, because there will always be publicity with mega projects and sort of misinformation out in the public, and it can be sort of demoralizing for the team. So trying to keep people's spirits up and just letting them know that, you know, today will pass and tomorrow will be a new day. So I'll obviously take it seriously, but not overly so.
Good. Did you ever have a time where you had specific PR professionals or political science graduates on teams or not?
Almost everyone. Certainly the Merriam Como Bridge, there was a whole team of people who managed the public press on Fulton and the World Trade Center as well, but not done as well. So I do think that professionals can help, and that's a great point to make, Chris.
Thanks. So John, have you come across managing stress in the full glare of public and political attention?
Daily. This is happening daily. Actually, it's I would say the main thing, Chris, is to stay calm, set expectation, under promise and over deliver, because I'm always receiving the calls from the clients and asking, okay, we need 1, 2, 3. Okay, when you need this, and the answer is always fix it yesterday. And when you give them the, no, guys, this will need, for example, a 1 week. No, takes 3 days. Guys, it's not for this. I just start to explain 1, 2, 3. So I can do it in 5 days rather than 7 days, but I cannot do it in 3 days. And I cannot do it definitely yesterday. It's unfortunately, sadly, it cannot happen. So set the right expectation, because generally the stress came, especially in mega projects, from the crazy deadlines, which is a continuous theme, especially due to the fact that there is multi-party involved and the huge amount of budget, tight time frames, the crazy running about to get things done in a matter, especially when there is commitment and there is especially public involved. Let's say they will open some office building or an expo on a specific date. So everyone is running crazy to achieve the date, which might not be actually an achieved milestone from day one. So, okay, guys, what you want to do, if you want to do a soft opening, for example, for this one, we can accommodate this by doing a specific area where it can accommodate this one, which will help to achieve this deadline of milestone, and then we complete the rest of the things. Or if you want this cost plan, for example, or report to get it presented tomorrow, I can give you headlines, high levels, estimates, and other things, but I cannot give you a full detailed BOQ, for example, for a retail mall or a university in 24 hours. I'm a Superman, but not to that extent.
Right. Thanks, John. Of course, it never helps because the media often take the facts and get them completely corrupted. Well, I'm sure we've all been there. So, Alex, so we have another clause: "Thou shalt manage the stress and the full glare of public and political attention." So
it's firmly a client's risk, I'm afraid. Chris.
Yeah.
That goes with the territory. I always think the stress is what the clients have. The lawyers don't want to add to it or make it any worse. So we commit to the art of the possible, and we do our best. And if we have to be a shoulder to cry on, sometimes we'll be that too.
Thank you, Alex. So mega projects, of course, have a reputation of overruns and delays, and I think the panel success is achievable with the correct mindset, communication, collaboration, diligent practice, and I think tenacity and integrity on the part of leadership, I would add to that as hugely important, and leading from the front. With that, we'll just go through the wrap up. I wanted to thank the CIOB and the RICS and the ACCE for their support of this webinar. if anything we discussed today raises questions or concerns on your project, please email us. And again, our email addresses are on the slide on the recording, or connect with us on LinkedIn and ask us a question directly. So we're out of time. We truly hope this session's been valuable to everybody attending, and thank you for all of you that attended. And goodbye from our teams in Atlanta, London, Cairo, Melbourne, and Birmingham, Alex. But thank you all very much indeed. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.